Hey, 7th grade, it's Mr. Herzberg here. Today is April the 15th, that's Wednesday, and we're going to be doing two things today. It's Wednesday, that means Pigman, Chapter 6. Also, we're going to be going over Chapter 5, kind of what we read, and we're going to be going over today's journal. So, let's get started. Alright, so this week you guys are working on text evidence for your journals. That is standard RI 7.1, that means reading informational texts, that's nonfiction, and pulling out text evidence and being able to answer questions. You guys are going to be reading, let's see here, five paragraphs about Vikings, historical Vikings, not the football team, but the guys that lived in Scandinavia quite a while ago. You're going to be in your journal today discussing one of the two common stereotypes about Vikings and why they are wrong. Okay, so stereotypes means having a generalization about the way someone is, but you're actually wrong about that generalization. You're judging someone before you get to know them. So maybe we always think Vikings, we look at the logo for the football team, and we always see they wear horns on their helmets, or that they always have beards, or that they're always these big, burly, mean guys carrying axes. Well, believe it or not, some of that stuff isn't true at all, and some of it is historically inaccurate. So you're going to be reading, and you're going to be telling me about the two stereotypes that you found and what made them false. Okay? And that's it for today. Just one big question. Give me 5 sentences on that question, guys. To back it up with text evidence. Say, I learned this stereotype was wrong, and then because of, and then paraphrase the text evidence. All right? Great. Now, let's take a look at the Pigman. So I hope you guys are enjoying this book. If you're not, stick with it for as long as you can. Watch these videos, guys. I cannot stress you enough to watch these videos of me reading it with you. For those of you that might be having a hard time getting into it, watching this video with me, getting into it like this, it's going to help you. So in Chapter 5, we learned that John and Lorraine, they did the prank game, the telephone pranks with John and Norton, or Dennis and Norton, excuse me, and they get invited over to Mr. Pignotti's house. Lorraine calls him on the phone. She keeps him on the phone. He thinks that there was some kind of like L&J fund charity. They go over there, and so Lorraine is basically frustrated at John because he kind of took the phone from her and during the prank call, and instead of allowing Lorraine to hang it up in the prank, John continued it, and so he encouraged Mr. Pignotti to actually give them money, and they're going to go to his house the next day and get it. Well, in Chapter 5, that's what they did, right? Remember? We did this before spring break. Lorraine is super upset because she doesn't want to really do this. She doesn't feel right taking money from a stranger. But John, on the other hand, says, wrong to take money. It was wrong to take money from an old man, but John says he needs to buy a 6-pack of beer, and he needs to do it, and he needs the cash. So what's the problem, right? The old man thinks he's giving to charity. I need to buy beer. No one's going to get hurt. That's what John thinks. So they get there. They argue about whether they should go over to his house or not, and they finally John convinces Lorraine that the man sounded lonely anyways. Maybe he needed someone to come visit with them. So Angelo Pignotti is a large man. We learned this. He's like in his late 50s. He lives alone. He just says, like he did on the phone, that his wife is on vacation somewhere, visiting her sister. And he opens the door. He's got this big smile on his face. He says, "Come on in, sit down, come in the kitchen," and offers him some wine and then gives him some snacks. And it's just super awkward. Well, the Pigman then tells John and Lorraine that while he was waiting for them to arrive, he had been practicing a little game on memorizing things and how to memorize items, and he even tests them and gets them to write down some things on a sheet of paper. And it says here's how to memorize these things, and it kind of weirds out John and Lorraine, but they do it anyways, okay? And that's just kind of what happens. So he writes down the exact words. He says, here's how to memorize these words. He draws them this picture right here, and it says girl, couch, boy, eye, chair, dog, bird, sign, stop sign, cockroach, and lighthouse. And he tells them to think of these items all in like a picture, the way you see it there in the book. And that's how you remember things, to see them all in a room together. And attach the pictures in your mind. And that's how it does work. And then they kind of keep talking, and then Mr. Pignotti goes, "We should all go to the zoo tomorrow." And the kids are kind of thrown off by that. They just came because they wanted money. So they're still holding this lie. And then he's like, "Well, if you don't want to go with me tomorrow, do you want to go to the zoo Sunday?" And they're kind of avoiding the question. And Lorraine says, we got to get going, Mr. Pignotti. It was nice talking to you. But he said, "Before you leave, kids, I need to show you my pigs." And he takes them to this room, and sure enough, in this room is a room full of glass pigs, small ones, kind of like the one here on the front of the book. Small glass pigs, and he's got a whole room full of them. He says he's been collecting them for years. He encouraged the kids to touch them. He said, "Don't be afraid to pick them up." It was a big change for my mother, Lorraine says, who never let her pick things up. And then he picks one up and says, "This one was the first one I got my wife. She thought it was a very funny pig. Pignotti, don't you get it?" "Yes, Mr. Pignotti, we get it." And that's kind of the end of chapter 5. So let's start chapter 6. Let's see what happens. Remember, the kids now they've spent a full day with him. They've got the money. This is going to be John's chapter, because remember, that was Lorraine's chapter. So they got out of there. He tried to invite him to the zoo. They're like, maybe someday, Mr. Pignotti. And they take the money. They're going to buy the beer. And they realize he's a really lonely guy. He didn't want them to leave. He just wanted to sit and talk. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of weird and creepy, right? 2 kids going to an old man's house they've never met. Kind of dangerous almost, too. Who knew what the guy might come out of the room with, a knife or something. But these kids, I think John and Lorraine are just so bored and so wanting something new that they're willing to take that chance. So let's get to chapter 6 and see what happens. And I'll read a little bit of it with you guys, and then I'll review what we read, and then I'm going to let you guys read the rest. So in today's chapter, John is going to cash the check Mr. Pignotti gave him. He's going to get his beer, his 6-pack of beer. He's going to get his cigarettes. But he's also going to try and convince Lorraine they should actually call the old man back up and meet him at the zoo. So Lorraine's going to get home a little bit late. Her mom's going to get mad at her. We're going to meet Lorraine's mom for the first time. And you're going to see that she is super mean. And she gets on Lorraine a lot. And she doesn't trust Lorraine. She works as a nurse. And she's a single mom. So she works really hard. And she wants Lorraine to pull her weight. So we'll kind of see that today as we read. Here we go. Right after we left the Pigmans, John dragged me down to Tony's Market, which is on the corner of Victory Boulevard and Zebra Avenue. All the kids go to Tony's because he sells beer to anyone, and for some reason the police always leave him alone. John thinks he pays them off, but I think it's just old Tony has a nice friendly face and believes in the old days when they thought a little alcohol was good for everyone. He's sort of a father image with a cultural lag. "John, you're not going to gas that check, are you? You can send it back to him in an envelope and tear it up, or Lorraine, if we don't cash it, he'll know something's funny, and he's going to call the cops," he told me with a typical John Conlon logic. So this is Lorraine. So my apologies. Chapter 5 was John. Got him mixed up. "I mean it. Really. I refused to talk to John for 5 minutes. I gave him the silent treatment. While I drank chocolate drink I bought with my own money, while John decided to cash the check, buy a 6-pack of beer, and he got a 6-pack of cigarettes. I just stared at him drinking his beer and waited to see how long it would take him to feel any kind of guilt for what we'd done to this old man. Wouldn't you love to go to the zoo? No, John. Oh, don't be a killjoy, Lorraine. Why should we go to the zoo? Do you mind telling me that? What do you mean, why? He raised his voice, which is typical when he needs to delay a second, because he's at a loss for his next distortion. We owe him something after taking $10 from him, don't we, Lorraine? We did. Why did you take that money for in the first place, John? I practically screamed at him. John jumped at my outburst and then slowly sipped his beer. He smiled and said, You're a little schizo today, aren't you, Lorraine? I didn't get home that night until well after 6:30, and I was a little scared when I found my mother there. She's a private nurse and was supposed to be working a 4 to 12 shift that night. I have to worry about finding my father there because he left 15 years ago when we got legal separation, and then he died 6 years ago, which made it a more permanent situation. As it is, my mother's enough to worry about. Where were you, Lorraine? I went to a drama club meeting, Mother. Until now? She fumbled with her buttons on her white nurse's uniform, which gave me a moment to think. Well, Mom, I had a soda with some of the kids afterwards and went to the Streaker's Luncheonette restaurant. I don't want you going in that restaurant. I've told you that before, Lorraine. Mom, all the kids go there. I don't care what all the kids do. I don't want you in there. I've told you, I've seen boys in there hanging around, and you know they only got one thing on their minds. My mother's got this real hang-up about men and boys. You didn't tell me about it yesterday. She put her faded blue bathrobe over her slip. My legs are killing me. I'm sorry, Mom. You know that old man had me on the run from the minute I got in there this morning at work? She started brushing her hair. At least his worries are all over now. Did he die? Of course he died. I told his daughter 2 days ago he wasn't going to last the rest of the week. Will you put some coffee on? I was glad to be able to get out of the kitchen because it makes me so sad to watch my mom brush her hair. My mom is a very pretty woman when she had long brown hair. And when she smiles, which is hardly ever. She just doesn't look the way she sounds, and I often wonder how she got this way. It's not exactly easy being a daughter, and more than once I've had to think about what a good psychiatrist could do for her. Actually, I think all of her problems are so deep-rooted, she'd need at least 3 years of good, intense psychoanalysis. I mean that old guy, Lorraine? Ugh. His throat was closing, he was bouncing up and down in bed for days. If they don't think I know what a cancer patient is going to wind up, well, they're mistaken. Yes, Mother. Lorraine, I don't feel like eating anything. I had a few pieces of roast out of the refrigerator. I bought some canned goods home I borrowed from their pantry. They'll never know they're gone. The family has started fighting over all his money anyways. I think there's a can of turkey soup. Why don't you have that for dinner? I can't tell you what she'd do if I ever took anything. But she isn't even ashamed of what she does. She figures they don't pay her enough anyways, so she'll just even it up in her own way. She came back in the kitchen, opened up a jar of instant coffee. I handed her this oversized coffee cup I gave her last birthday. It says Mom printed in huge letters on one side. She cried when she unwrapped it. Anyways, here's $2 for your sophomore dues, Lorraine. She put the money on the table. That school thinks it's easy for a woman to support a kid by herself. $2 for this, $5 for that. $23 for a dental certificate. I can't even afford to get myself a pair of new stockings. She pulled up her bathrobe and moved up toward me. I thought she was going to hit me. Look at this, Lorraine. There's so many runs in these things, you think a cat's been chewing on them. I could wait another week to pay dues, Mom. No, we're going to pay it now, Lorraine. No one's going to talk about us behind our backs. Besides, I've got an extra $10 from Solvy's. Wait, what? Solvy's, you know, the funeral home. You know that family let me call Solvy's, and they always slip me extra cash for their business. How's your turkey soup? Fine, I guess. You know, I heard Berdine's funeral parlor is slipping $20 bills under the table. Maybe I'll give them a little business when the next patient croaks. As soon as this one died, I called the nurses registry, but they won't have anything from me until the day after tomorrow. Another terminal cancer, I guess. She sat down opposite me and lifted a cup to her lips. I tried to keep the eyes on the letters. You know, Lorraine, I think it'd be a good idea if you stayed home from school tomorrow and cleaned the house with me. I have a Latin test, Mom. Can't you make that up? No, Mom, I said quietly, hoping she wouldn't explode. Sometimes it's just the way I say one word that really makes her go off. And she's so quick with her hands, it's hard to think of her being gentle with sick people. I can't go out and earn a living, and I can't keep this house decent. You got to do something around here, Lorraine. I blew on a spoonful of soup. I did the laundry yesterday. Well, it's about time you did something. And I changed the sheets on the bed, Mom. You know, you sleep in that bed too, you know. I was sorry I'd said anything to her. Look up the telephone number for the funeral parlor, will me? I want to have it handy just in case. I put my soup down. Are you sure you can't stay home tomorrow, Lorraine? Yes, Mother. I think you could take a year off from that old school and not miss a thing. The test is very important, Mom. Yeah, you know what else is important? Later on in life, I'm sure you're going to run around talking Latin all over the place. All right, I'm going to stop there, guys. And I'm going to let you read the rest of this chapter. So as you read, I want you to see what the kids decide to do with Mr. Pignotti, if they decide to go to the zoo or not. And I want you to see how Lorraine and her mother's relationship kind of pans out here. I'm going to put some questions up on Google Classroom. Make sure you do those. You're also going to have a journal. So finish reading chapter 6 and do your journal. if you have any questions about the Pigman, come to tomorrow's, or Wednesday, that's today's, Google Meets from 1:30 to 2 o'clock. See you guys then.